Hello, everybody. We're happy to welcome you back in our channel. I'm Maya, the co-founder of the Buyer's Agent Portugal. Our mission is to make the process of buying in Portugal as stress-free and risk-free as possible by providing expertise, guidance, and support throughout the journey. This is our second episode today. The theme of today's episode is building and renovating in Portugal, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're going to go through a lot of things. I'm very happy to introduce our guest speaker. Hi, how are you, Santiago?
Really good. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you for being with us here today. Santiago is originally from Argentina. You've got more than 10 years experience in your field, whether it's the architectural side of things and even the construction side of things. You used to own a construction company in Argentina, so you actually got your hands dirty.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to report on that to us. You've been based in Portugal since 2021, correct?
Yeah.
You worked for an architectural firm here, and recently now you set up your own office.
Correct.
You worked on the residential side of things, whether it's the building or renovation, also on, I think, a resort in Quinta del Lago. So you've seen it all. Mm-hmm. Okay. You said to me that you're a BIM specialist. He'll explain to us what that is in a moment, but that's a very important skill to add to your CV, as you will say. And I've got Joe with me here. You remember him? He's appearing from time to time in certain videos. Co-founder of the Buyer's Agent as well, and an avid fixer-upper and investor in the UK and in Portugal. So, as I said, we have a lot to cover today. We've got 7 parts, and we really want to try to give you an honest picture of what it is to build or renovate in Portugal, so that if that's the route you want to take, you feel you've got enough information and you're going into it with your eyes open. So let's start with the beginning. What is the architectural role and what are the buyer's misconceptions? So first question to you, Santi. Very often clients come here and say, I'm just going to buy a plot and build on it. Ta-da! What are some of the early flags and realities that international buyers need to be aware of?
Okay. It's not that simple. I had the same thought when I came here because, well, in Argentina, kind of, you can buy. I just read a little bit the legal stuff and develop what you want. But here is much more attached to the different legal in each municipality,
Yes.
So the most important thing that I have had some clients that miss to do before buying a plot is to have the plot's papers.
Yep.
You have some papers like caderneta predial, certidumbre predial. They tell you like how many square meters the plot has, what's built inside and what's not, because maybe it says that there are 2 houses built and the plot just has 1, and there are several stuff that are important to take into consideration.
So really understanding what you are buying in effect.
Correct.
Okay, and not relying on just what a listing agent will tell you or the owner themselves. Yes.
Yeah, like a listing agent or the owner, they want to sell. So they can tell you what maybe they are not lying or anything. It's just what they think can be done or what could be done, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Yes.
But now change and legislation changes
Often.
Quite often.
Yes.
Like I have been here for 4 years and has changed several times.
And we'll talk about that.
So it's something to really have into consideration.
Okay.
All the legal part and the zonification, like what can be done in each case.
Yes.
Because you talk about new buildings and ruins, which are totally different things.
Yes.
to
And what about timing? The timing these things take, I always think is a huge mistake people make.
Yeah, well, the timing is really attached with the type of project you're going to do, because one thing is a a ruin in a rural area, where you have to see in which type of zonification, if it is like REN, which is National Ecological Reserve, or RAN, National
Agricultural.
Agricultural Reserve, and many other, that can take some time. Then you
Yes.
have some more urban lands, plots inside what they call here loteamiento,
Yes.
which they have like pre-approved things. So that process is like easier and faster because city council already knows like this can be done here. You just have to comply with that, and in a couple of months you can start.
Okay. I just want to clarify that point because land classification is quite complicated in Portugal, and very often when you speak with agents, they'll basically divide it into rural and urban. But actually, within the rural in particular, there are different classification, which means that you will have restrictions. And I've been witness myself of people who've been caught out. Unfortunately, their architect hadn't picked up on that, and that had an impact on the construction. So it's very important to really understand not only whether you've got a rural plot and a urban plot, but actually whether you are, part of a red zone for the fire, for instance, which means that's it. You can't build.
Yeah.
Or if you're within an agricultural area, because there will be restrictions. So that's one thing that they need to look at.
Yes, and it's not just if you have a rural or an urban plot, because you can have a plot that has a part rural and a part urban.
Yes.
So this is an urban plot of, 5,000 square meters. Yeah, but the urban part is just 80 square meters.
Yes.
The rest is rural and you cannot do anything.
Yes.
So that's why, like, to do like the investigation, the due diligence,
Yes.
in all the paperwork of the plot, and to be really sure of what you can or cannot do there.
If we go back onto the timing, obviously once you've done the due diligence, but imagine if someone is buying a plot of land that has no project on. So they're really at the beginning. What's the sort of time scale that they're looking at to be able to start
Okay.
digging?
Yeah, I understand. It really depends on if it's like an empty plot that is urban and it's inside a loteamiento.
Yeah.
Probably you can, once you have the architectural project and in the engineering project, you have
Yes.
all done, because then what an architect times are and an engineering times are is something else. But just focusing on
Yes.
city council, if everything is like set to build, you can have it in 1-2 months.
Okay.
Let's say.
So just to clarify again for our viewers, what you have in Portugal is called urbanization area,
Yep.
where you've got a big plot of land. It's been divided. They're selling the plot, and most of that plot is almost pre-approved. So you'll be sold that plot, and we'll say you can build, for instance, a 200 square meters house with a basement and a top floor. On that basis, as long as your architect respect these criteria, you don't have to go through the lengthy process of putting forward
Exactly.
the project. You can start and concurrently put the project to the council. But for most areas, that's not the case. So
No. Especially when you are talking about you want to refurbish an old ruin or
Yes.
some big plot of land in a rural area, that's different story.
Okay, and again, we'll talk about that because I think we see through our clients, we always get a lot of questions from that. And you will hear, I think, Santi or even Joe or me, a lot saying it depends because unfortunately, it depends always of a lot of things here. Talking about the journey of buying a plot of land, when do you think is best to involve an architect? Even before they put an offer in, how early is it?
In my opinion, is the sooner the better. Imagine you are going to, I don't know, a design fashion show, whatever, and you want to do a really nice dress for you, and you go to a designer. will you go to the designer with the silk or with the fabric, or you will talk to them to see which is the best fabric, you know?
Yes.
Well, the plot to do a house is kind of the fabric for designer.
Yes.
So if you can get the person that will develop your project to help you pick the best place and do the needed due diligence to that, I think it's better. Of course, if you can come with a plot, we can work as well.
Yeah.
But the sooner the better.
The sooner the better. And I think it's important to say very often our buyers expect the lawyers to do the due diligence part of things. But actually in Portugal, you'll find that it is the architect that really know their stuff, because they are the one who work directly with the councils, putting the project together. And I would say back engineer, you reverse engineer the process. So very often you would say, well, you need to do that so we can be sure to get it approved. So there's maybe a bit less imagination in the process, but your job is to say, with that particular council, it's better to have that particular approach, or they don't like that type of, housing or design. So you'll be able to, to give guidance on that side of things.
No, I would say that the lawyers would often refer
Yes.
to an architect. You can ask them the questions, and they will often say, "No, that's the question for an architect." And it is a little bit chicken and egg. It's like, at what stage do you bring them in? Like you said, I agree 100%. It should be as early as possible. But if there's no agreement in place and we don't even know whether an offer would be accepted, do you want to start incurring the costs of maybe taking somebody on to get that advice?
I would say 100% yes, and I'll tell you why. I will not cite them, but maybe they'll recognize themselves. I have a friend of mine who have bought a piece of land in São Brás, and they bought it for a very, very good price. And they were told, oh, no, you can build whatever you want. And they cannot build whatever they want. And basically, when they went to the architect and they're starting to draft, a project, the architect is bound to what is possible, which is you start at the ruin, you start where the building exists. And they're like, oh, but no, we don't want the house there. We want the house on that part. And it just doesn't work that way. It's not as simple as it's my piece of land and I can do whatever you want. If they actually had spent maybe a little bit of cash doing a consultancy with an architect, they probably wouldn't have bought that piece of land. Now, and we've seen that time and time again. I have another examples of people who have built a house. They renovated a house in the Eastern Algarve, and they didn't know it was in a RAN area. And basically with the RAN area, you've got restriction on resale time if you add a pool, because you're not meant to add a pool. And they got caught out by that. So they are real life story examples of when it can go wrong, and you don't want to be penny pinchers because it may cost you a lot more money at the end, I think. Okay, thank you for that. So now we're on to part 2, and we're going to speak about the very interesting legal side of things. So licensing, regulation, and new rules. You mentioned regulation changes all the time. We know about that. Briefly and broadly speaking, can you tell to us about the process of getting a project approved?
Okay, yes. Again, and not to sound like I'm repeating myself, but I will. It depends.
Yes.
So, as said before, it's totally different to do it inside the loteamiento with predefined things where you already know what can be or cannot be done. Sometimes you even have like some aesthetic things you have to comply with, like facade color or some kind of material that can and cannot be used, etc. So in that kind of projects, we have had a legal, some new law which is called Simplex. It was done in 2024.
Yes.
It does make some things simpler in those plots. You used to need to present something which is called comunicación previa. So it's not you need it, but you could present it, which was basically you need all your architectural project or your construction project, your builder with their license, their building license. You deliver everything to city council, and in not long.
When you say not long, are we talking 3 months, 6 months, 1 month?
A month,
A
2
month.
months.
2 months.
Between 1 and 2 months,
Okay.
let's say. 20 working days.
Okay.
You should have your answer. Well, that answer can also be delayed if you need any like external agency's opinion over your project.
Okay.
I know some like water agency, or if it's a place near RAN or REN, you need those entities to say what they think about your project, if it can be done or cannot. So if they have a delay, also, if you need that and they are delayed, will be more.
Okay.
But you can have it in between 1 and 2 months.
Okay.
With the Simplex, that they allowed in some municipalities, again, because each municipality is different, and everything is related on how they interpret the law.
Yeah.
Because it's not just 1 + 1 2, it's like there's someone reading the law and watching your project and saying, oh, this is compliant or not. So maybe one person say yes and another say no, and are in the same or in different municipalities. So it depends on that. You can present a PIP, which is
pre-approved plans.
Pre-approved plans.
Pedido de información previa. It's like you are asking for information, but they have a new article in which, under that article, you can just ask for the authorization with the architectural project alone. And then you can have the engineering and the builder's papers on site. You don't need to deliver them.
Okay.
So that makes it more, it makes it quicker, because as you deliver the architectural project inside City Council and it's processing there, you can continue with the engineering stuff.
And a piece of advice is, because sometimes it's a point of argumentation on a sale. And very often the buyers are saying, well, no, we'd like the sellers to do the PIP so that we know what we can do. But actually, we always recommend that it is the buyer that does the PIP, even though they will have to incur, the cost, because then it cannot be revoked because it's attached to the person. So we were explaining, always do it, the buyers, then it's their PIP. Otherwise, it is the seller's PIP, and the municipality, the council may share, well, no, for that person, that was yes, but maybe for you, it will be no, or there is a change of law in the meantime that will change their interpretation. I do have a question in terms of Simplex. One of the issue in the past is you would provide your project, and there'll be no timing obligation on the council. I know other countries whereby they have to come back to you within a certain time frame. Otherwise, it is considered as an agreement. It's a tacit agreement. Are we in the same situation now in Portugal?
What the Simplex says is yes.
Okay.
You have, depending on the type of projects, depending on the type of terrain and the municipality, you have X amount of days to receive an answer.
Okay.
And if you don't receive the answer within those days, it's tacitly approved.
Okay.
But then
it's whether you want to move forward.
Yes.
Okay.
it's like you are doing it on your own risk, you know. It's like
There could
it's
be
not like I have here my approval, you
Yeah.
know. It's like it's a tacit approval.
Okay.
But they could come back. They can come back and say,
I
and
don't know,
maybe cause more delays or other problems.
Simplex is something has an ear, so it's too new to say, you know, like
Okay.
this is what usually happens because
Yes.
it's something new.
Okay. And for the people who are looking to renovate,
Okay.
so they're not looking to build, they want to be a renovation. Is there any process in that regard? So let's say you're only renovating the interior of the house, you're not adding extra square meterage to the house. Do you need pre-approval before, after? Do you need to resubmit the plans when you've changed the layout internally? How does that work on the renovation site?
So if you, for example, you have a house, you want to paint it or change a window, whatever. If you don't change the window size, you just change for a newer window with better glass, better
Yes.
shading, whatever, but you don't change the color nor the size, you can do it.
Okay.
You know, if you have a white house and you want to repaint it white,
You can
you
do
can
it.
do it.
What about if you wanted to take a wall out or maybe make a room larger?
If it's an external or you are touching structure, you need a license.
Okay.
If you're not touching structure and it's internal, you can do it.
You can do it.
You can present something that's called obras exentas de controlo previo, which is works without any need of pre-approval, but you are just saying you are gonna do something, not asking for
permission.
authorization.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you do and it improves the state of the building, or you don't touch any structure and you just do interior jobs,
Okay.
you can do that.
Sorry, one question on the structure. Are we talking like a load-bearing wall, something where you'd have to go through a pillar? You're not talking about just taking down like a partition wall or something
No,
like that.
yeah.
So you're just talking about the main structure of
Yeah,
the property.
that's the structure that maintains the house standing.
Okay.
And I remember when I was trying to understand the Simplex, when it came out, that there was something about windows. And actually, I think that falls under what you just said, this very long name, in terms of you saying, oh, I'm going to make the windows bigger, but you didn't necessarily need pre-approval.
No, to make the windows bigger, you do because you are changing the facade of the house.
Okay.
But to change, I have this window, which is old, and I want to change it for a double glass window.
Then that's fine.
In the same size, same color, you can do it.
You can do it. Okay. So we talked about the different planning laws that are changing. Do you think that it will, I would say, will affect the type of standards or the quality of the build that is expected from builders? So better energy standards, maybe new techniques of construction. Do you think that maybe that's also the aim of the council, to go towards better houses?
Yes, you have outside Simplex, you have also some other laws that are really. You have the Euro code, which should be followed, which has not a lot of years long, but you have to comply in, for example, in Algarve, we have a seismic area.
Yes.
So the structure has to comply with the Euro code, and that changes that, as well with the temperature of the house, and the isolation, the thermic isolation has to comply with some rules that makes your house maybe a little bit more expensive to build, but better in terms of thermic isolation, how you leave the house, and in reselling the house as well.
In your experience, we know that certain regions or municipalities tend to be easier or harder to get approval for. I mean, that's a fact. I think I put it as a question, but I think we can agree this is a fact. Would you go as far as saying that it has to be part of the deciding factor as to where you build? Or is just, as long as you know about it, that's okay?
It's not like a law, a rule that this is slow and this is fast.
Yes.
You know, there are a lot of things attached. For example, the amount of work each municipality is having at that moment, you know. So if one is like super big and super loaded of work, they will take more time than others. Then there are some municipalities that work 100% with online and digital delivery, and other municipalities are both paper and digital, and other are just paper. So
Okay.
that also
Has an impact.
has an impact on the speed of things.
Sorry, before you continue, that reminds me, when we made the introduction about you, we said that you were a BIM specialist. So can you quickly, because that relates to that, explain what that means?
Yes. BIM stands for Building Information Modeling, which is in simple terms to digitally build the house, the building, whatever you are doing, right? You build it completely, like brick per brick, all the plaster, all the pipes, the gas pipes, water pipes, HVAC ducts, everything, all the electricity cables. So once you have done that and you have built that, you can check all the clashes you have inside, you know, because you receive some projects from engineers, for example, and you have the electrical project, water project, this and that. In here, you build them all together in one place, and you can check all the clash detection basically, and you can alterate and you can move those piping on that infrastructure the house has in order to avoid that.
On
Once you
site.
have that, you have done that, you have all the problems, or at least a big part of the problems you would have on site solved
You avoid.
before even starting.
Yeah, and just for clarity, when you're talking about clashes, we're talking maybe where pipes are going through beams that you wouldn't necessarily want them going through,
Exactly.
or your electric and your water pipes are hitting each other, which you definitely don't want to do. So it's really is a case of this is and should be a system that I think you said by 2030 will be compulsory.
Yes, from 2026, next year, you will be allowed to already deliver like this to city council. From 2030 on will be compulsory. Every project will need to be.
And you were explaining to us that not only you get the eagle-eye view on the project, so as you say, you can avoid all of these issues, but even in terms of purchasing of materials,
Yes.
you are able to know exactly how many ton of cement you need and all of that. So it allows you to be a lot more precise when it comes to your costing.
Exactly, because as I said before, like you are building it digitally, so you have all the information there. It's not like it's a line you draw, you know, it's a proper brick. It is
Yes.
there. Then you can just, this is all done by softwares and machine. You even have AI inside, and you can analyze it and say like, okay, how many bricks do I have? Perfect. How many bricks do I have in the first floor? How many bricks? And you can separate everything as you want inside the software. So it's pretty handy to
And it's all-
construction companies.
Absolutely.
And
And it's all done automatically. You input the information
yes,
and then they do the calculation for...
the calculations are automatically. The
Yes.
input of the information has to be done by
Yes,
someone
obviously.
that knows the design and to use the software as
Okay.
well.
Well, that's a great...
Well, it can have some huge advantages.
Absolutely.
You know, like we were talking earlier about the mistakes that people make and to avoid those mistakes, which are so much more costly when you're doing it on the construction as opposed to digitally.
Of course.
You know, so that's a huge saving. And then having your quantities and being able to perhaps purchase and save money there, because if a project drags out for too long,
Yes.
material prices go up.
Yeah, and
there
also
can be some huge savings.
you can like attach your model to a working scheme where you have like this day I gonna do this and that, and you can put prices on each thing, so you can generate a proper cash flow of the work, because like by month 2 I will have all this and this has this cost.
Yeah.
You can also check that it's better to analyze for clients how much money they will need to put, and as well to see if we are going on time or not.
Yes.
Because something is what you plan, something else is
It's the
what happens.
reality.
So
Yes, and I think this is a system that is very interesting for big project, but actually also for house and people who are a bit on a tight budget, because they allow them to really have control. Because the reality is when you build a house, more often than not, you are not from the trade. So you don't really know. You're relying on what information people are giving you, and you can argue that the software won't lie to you. So it will say that should be on the basis of you having X people on site and you've got your materials, etc. That's the timing it should be. So it should give you a true picture. Obviously, as you say, there's life, people don't turn up, there's rain, etc. We've seen this year the amount of rain we've had. Builders are not used to work on this condition, so it's broken a bit of havoc on many sites and created delays. But these things aside, for someone who's a bit nervous and is not from that background, it would give them a fairly good understanding and overall picture. So I think that's really, really interesting. Well, let's talk about ruin, because there's, again, a lot of those,
Yes.
In Portugal. They've gone in price quite tremendously. Even in the 5 years I've been here. Can you give us a little idea? Because honestly, we hear everything and anything about ruin. What is the general rule of thumbs around buying a plot with a ruin?
it depends on the ruin, it depends on the plot, it depends on the municipality, it depends on a lot of things. The important thing here is to do the due diligence and to understand what can and what cannot be made. But also that sometimes is not enough. I have this project where, this has a lot of different things that can also be interesting for this conversation, because we had a client from the UK that came to us with a project developed by an architect in the UK.
Okay.
And they wanted to buy this ruin and to transform it into this. It was a character home. It respected the aesthetics of the Portuguese, the Algarvian architecture, let's say, but didn't comply with the legislation that the plot had, Basically, we had to transform that project from like 500 square meters to 300 square meters. So it was almost half. It had 2 floors and couldn't
Have 2 floors.
Yeah, because you have to respect, again, depending on the zonification. In this case, you had to respect the number of floors of the ruin. The ruin had 1, couldn't have 2 floors. That's it. So we had to modify that, but we thought it looked nice, the tall part, and we just took out the 2nd floor, but did a higher ceiling in the living room and kitchen part, because it looked nice and was inside the maximum height we could do. So basically, we did that, and then we saw the papers they sent us, and the ruin was the double of the size the register ruin had. So we had to add another thing to the process. It was to legalize the existing ruin, because in papers it had 40 meters, but there were 80 meters of ruin built.
Okay.
So first we had to legalize it. That's one process. Once it is legalized, we had to deliver the 2nd project that we transformed totally from the original one that came from the UK. When we delivered it, City Council didn't allow it, because they say that the double height ceiling looked like 2 floors, but it isn't 2 floors. Yeah, but looks like. So no. And it complied with the total height, and there's some things
that... It was interpretation. It's like what we said at the beginning,
Yes,
the issue of
you
you've
should.
got the law, you've got the council that how they interpret the law, and then each individual within
Yeah,
the council how they interpret the law.
yeah, yeah. So there's not a magic formula, let's
Yes.
say, to do things. Basically, do the best work investigating the plot and checking all the legislation and present it to city council and get your approval. And you buy it once you get your approval.
Yeah.
If not, like this man wanted to do a 500 square meters house, and then he was sending with 300 and a low ceiling, something different that he had in his mind, you know.
And he probably bought the plot of land at that price on the fact that he could have a 500 square meters house. So it's a completely different product at the end and a completely resale value afterwards as well.
It is totally different. In this case, luckily, he didn't buy it before. He listened to us and did all the things before buying. So yes, you can incur into some expenses for doing that, but I think it's like
I think it's worth every penny.
going to a doctor to prevent an illness than to cure it.
Yeah.
It's more or less the same.
Yeah.
So
he walked away from the project altogether.
no, it's in process.
It's in process.
Yes.
But it's quite interesting, the fact that, he being British, he thought, oh, I'll use an architect in Britain. And maybe from an aesthetics and ID standpoint, the architect was good. But unfortunately, he doesn't understand the ecosystem. And you can't help but he will base it on what he knows from the UK. And the laws, the regulation, everything is very, very different.
It's totally
So that
different.
was completely useless.
Well, I think it's a very, very important point you've brought up. When you're buying here and you're buying plots here, you have to
Yes.
have an architect that works here, that knows what they're doing, that knows the laws, that knows the legals. Because like you mentioned before, there are from time to time people that may misinterpret or get something slightly wrong. So it's paramount that they know the law inside out.
Yeah, of course, because for example, I can tell you, architecture is architecture worldwide, so it's not that I have to do a new career to go to a different country. But you have to understand both culture-wise, because then you will want to resell it probably in the future. So most of your market to resell is in that country. So then you have the culture part, you have the legal part, and you have also the climate on how things are done. Because, for example, we had some clients that wanted to do some unshaded floor-to-ceiling windows that don't work in Algarve. Don't work because the thermic insulation you will need, the type of windows you will need to do that, it's not that it cannot be done. You can do it. But the type of windows you will need will do the cost rise a lot.
Okay.
Because you need shutters here, or you need a kind of a pergola or natural shading, and then you will have a huge expense on AC for the summer. So some things, it's not that cannot be done, but shouldn't.
Okay.
If you want to do it the more advantageous for you,
Yes. Understand.